Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our podcast here, Lights Camera Discussion Podcast, where we're going to be talking about Mr. Alex Garland. This is part 2 of our also 2-part episode. I'm here with, again, Mr. Collected Unit and Todorov here. Guys, how are we doing?
Not bad, mate. How are you?
Not too bad. Todd, yourself?
Yeah, all good, mate. All good. Enjoyed the last one. Ready for this one.
Been a wee while since we spoke, so it's good to see you guys again. Okay, let's just not beat around the bush. Let us get straight into it. So, on this episode, we're talking about the final 2 films in Alex Garland's filmography, which were Men and Civil War. So, let's get started on Men. So, a young woman goes on a solo vacation to the English countryside following the death of her ex-husband. Now, Collie, thoughts on Men?
If Annihilation was the beginning of Garland disappearing up his own arse, then Men is well and truly where he does. Don't get me wrong, like, the film's perfectly fine. I just didn't really dig it. Like, it's not that, it's like bad on Men, therefore I'm like, defensive about that. I get the kind of, the message that's trying to be conveyed. I just thought it was pretty meh, like, just nothing special, nothing like even close to some of his prior work, especially like Ex Machina. I thought it was just quite a big, drop off in terms of quality of story writing. Jesse Buckley and Rory Kinnear, don't get me wrong, are great. I will talk more about them, but yeah, just not one of those films that clicked with me, I'm afraid.
Todd?
This is built as a film that I should hate in terms of, like, I know it's more horror focused than the other films, but in terms of like that sort of, like, say, up its own arse, what A24 was maybe known for initially, like that sort of weird, I don't know, like what was it, Hereditary sort of thing. I went into this expecting to hate it, but only going to see because it was Alex Garland. I fucking loved it. Like, I came out of that film. It's not a 5-star film, but I came out of it blown away. Disgusted, like, it's fucking weird, but just fascinated by it, by this sort of world he created, and the discourse around it about, like, I don't think it's inherently men are bad. I don't think that that's the message that this film is portraying necessarily, but I'm sure we'll get into it. I thought performances were excellent. The visual effects, again, really well done. That was really cool. Massey?
I'm definitely more with Collie. I didn't like it. I like, okay, I didn't hate it. Like, I didn't hate every second. I thought, again, we'll get into it, but performances were really good. I thought it was just too weird for the sake of being weird. I don't think it's fair, like, some of the discourse that had kind of went around it, for the people that didn't like it. But I didn't like it at all. I thought it was a really strange film that I felt like it was trying too hard to be like, oh ladies, look at me, I'm a man, I know your struggles, sort of thing. That's kind of what I took from it as part of the imagery and stuff. But I didn't really like it at all, to be perfectly honest. Well, okay, so Todd, as a person who really enjoyed it, let's talk about some of the acting. So, of course, Jessie Buckley is the main actress in this film. What do you like about her performance?
So, I love the fact that we meet her at a sort of point that we don't always see characters at, in terms of, like, when you see these people who have been through trauma or whatever, we normally see them at, like, the crux of the trauma, or, like, this is her sort of on the recovery. She's positive. She's trying to get out there. She's trying to do something to enjoy herself. She doesn't want a mate to come along and kind of join her. And I think she's trying to be resilient, and you can see that throughout, like, the first sort of act of the film is her trying to push back against this weirdness and the sort of isolation. I thought she does Fear very well, because again, she's not perfect in terms of some of the films, like what was it? I get mixed up between that and the Netflix program, but is it I Don't Want to Be on This World Anymore or something like that she was in? And I thought the film was cack and she was cack in it. Whereas this, she just plays it perfectly. That fear, that sort of vulnerability, the scenes with her and her boyfriend in the flashbacks were phenomenal. Yeah, I thought she was great. There's moments in it where she could have gone a bit over the top, and I think there's moments that works. But yeah, I thought she was fantastic. Collie?
Yeah, like she was really really good. And her, especially the interaction where her husband hits her and stuff. I think her reaction to that is perfectly like natural, and she portrays it as like exactly like how a woman would react and how they should react to that kind of behavior, which I thought was really good. It's a bit we'll get to the end of the film, but there's a bit during that she doesn't overact or anything like that. She just goes. I can't even remember if she says anything, but she just turns away in disgust, as in like a what the fuck kind of moment. It's like you say, she could have hammed it up at any point during this, but I think she just plays it completely solidly. The discussion with the priest, I thought she was really good because she's like, oh, the guy's trying to listen to me, and then as soon as it goes a bit wayward, she just gets up and goes fuck off, and then walks away. So I think she just played this like as it should have been played, if that makes any sense. Like no kind of overacting or anything like that, just solid, exactly what was expected and needed for that role. So as much as I didn't enjoy the film as a whole, she was definitely a part of it that I thought was great. Massey, what do you think about Jessie Buckley?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think her and Rory Kinnear, the two performances were the best parts, really. I thought, yeah, definitely her in the flashbacks with her manipulative, was it her husband, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
I thought those were really interesting, like character kind of, almost like character studies. I thought that was a really good sort of back and forth between those two, and I thought her performance was one of the few high points, definitely for me, for this film. The thing about Rory Kinnear, obviously he had a lot more to do. I thought he was absolutely phenomenal in what he did. Obviously he had a range of things to do. One particularly was hanging dong. But yeah, I thought his performance was really, really good, and he kind of played everything with that sort of underlying sort of it was creepiness, but there was like always like an ulterior motive for him as well, which I thought he did exceptionally well. Colin, what were your thoughts on Rory Kinnear's performances?
I thought he was great. I've been a fan of his for years. He was in a program about 10 odd years ago called Southcliffe, which is about a domestic shooter in a town in England, and he was like a news reporter who came back to the town, and I thought he was excellent in that. Obviously a big fan of his work in the Bond films as well. And yeah, in this, the fact that he had to play the multiple characters and multifaceted characters, even within those characters, I thought was excellent. There's only one bit, and this is kind of getting onto the visual effects, but see the effect when he like his face was on that little kid. Ugh. I thought that was horrendous. Like, yeah. I thought that looked crap, like student movie type bad, and it just like completely took me out of it. It just, I don't know what, like they could have probably like toned it down by half or something like that, so it slightly looked like even just have his eyes or something like that, and it would have been fine. But it was just this weird, like uncanny, like moon face type thing. It was bizarre.
Do you know? Did you ever see the Alan Partridge when he did the One Show like rip off thing?
Yes.
And when he's the kid in the class, yeah. It was exactly like that. Like it was so bad.
That's actually a good shout. Yeah, I thought that took out, but that's not on Kinnear though. I thought he was great. Especially as like the two main characters, I guess, that she has the interactions with. Like in terms of speaking to the priest and Jeffrey, I thought he was class. But even just as the kind of the vacant green man, yellow man kind of type character, I thought he was great in that, and it was good to see him, who's probably normally not even like a supporting actor and stuff. He's quite a lot of the time like just on the cast. I thought for him to be in such a prominent role in a big film, because like Alex Garland by this point was very well known, and everyone was excited about all his work. I thought it was a good opportunity, and I think he definitely did well. So in terms of the film as a whole, Buckley and Kinnear are probably the biggest and best parts of it, and everything else that we're ready to get into is kind of probably the bits that I didn't enjoy, but we down to that. But if we're strictly speaking about Kinnear, I thought he knocked it out of the park.
Todd?
Yeah, like I don't think there's like much to add on. He's a bit player in quite a lot of the things that I've seen him in. I've added that to the list to go away and watch. Like, I'd like to see him in more as that main character. I thought him as Jeffrey was amazing. Like, I think it's that sort of over the top character that you don't. Are there really people like that? And I assume there are in the country, but you know, we don't see them on a daily basis. And for him to go from that, where I was a bit like, oh, is that who he's being? Is it to like the cop and the barman and like you say the vicar? Yeah, I think he did a fantastic job. Like you say, I think he's got a lot to do. He there's that level of creepy with the vicar, and I know like we'll get into it, but that hand wrapped around her neck, like, so how'd you get the kid VFX so wrong, and then that hand so right? Like, that was gross. But yeah, he did a fantastic job. Massey?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of spoke about Kinnear. I completely agree with both of you. I think him and Buckley were just phenomenal. There's not too much more I can add with Kinnear. Again, I thought he was one of the best parts. Shall we get into maybe the story and and kind of what happened? I mean, Todd, also you enjoyed the film, so what parts of it were enjoyable for you? What did you think was done well? Yeah,
I think the atmosphere and the setup of the entire thing like had me hooked from the beginning. Because I felt like I couldn't. Now, knowing what I know from the film, I feel like you obviously can't trust any of them, but I felt like I could trust Jeffrey. And then there was moments where I was like, "Oh, hang on, no, you can't. You can't." You know, when he was on about the apples and the scrumpy, and you can't have that. It was kind of, there was almost like a threatening about him, like where he said about ladies, do be careful what you flush. Like, the way that he speaks to her feels almost inappropriate. I don't know. Like, so I was set up ready from the beginning. I don't want to just go on like this is why I love it, but like her walking through that tunnel and the sort of the skull in the trees, I was just like, that's really cool. I really like that, like the sort of the skull that was made out of the leaves and stuff, and her with the echoes. I just, again, it just bit by bit gripped me. The ending and sort of the build up towards that freaked me out, and it takes like made me uncomfortable. It didn't freak me out; it made me very uncomfortable. And I think it takes a lot to do that in terms of like some of the stuff that I watch. It was brilliant, and I thought it just kept asking questions. So I'm finding it hard to pin down rather than just going like the score was great or the visuals were great. Like, I think the main bit for me was that it kept me asking what's going on and where is she going to find any kind of solace? How is she going to survive this when there's a group of people around her that are the same person? Are they the same person? Is it like a creature? Is it supernatural? Which I know it like kind of lends itself to, and I don't know if you want to talk more about that. But yeah, it was more just the sort of the atmosphere and the horror aspect of it that I loved. I don't know if there's anything you two want to touch on in terms of the story. I don't just want to ramble. Sorry.
I think that, there were some things that worked. Like, I thought the score was quite good, or at least the way that it used her, like, you know, when she was like singing in the tunnel, and that was kind of like used in the score later on and stuff as well. I thought that was like an interesting way to do it. It wasn't overbearing in the score and stuff, but also it was kind of there. But like, I don't know why it went so off the rails, to be perfectly honest. Like, the last, I'd kind of checked out anyway, but then the last sort of like 15-20 minutes, I I didn't know what I was looking at. I was kind of like, I was grossed out as well, and I was just like, why is it going down this sort of route? I kind of got the imagery, or at least like the metaphors and stuff that it was saying, or like the way that I interpreted it, and the fact that for me, obviously the fact that it was all Rory Kinnear, it didn't mean that it was all the same person. It was just the way that she obviously kind of like visualized that the fact that all men are, or the men that she interacted with were kind of all the same, or had the same sort of like, again, underlying ulterior motives or prejudices towards like herself as like a single person. You know, the fact that she didn't have a husband with her and that sort of thing. That's kind of what I took from that imagery. But then at the end with the, well, let's just get into the birthing of each other and stuff. Like I again, as I say, I'd checked up at that point and I was just like, what is going on? Like this is just, I was absolutely done by that point. So, I mean, Collie, as someone else who didn't maybe quite enjoy the film as such, what was your thoughts on
so
that?
it was more that I didn't feel there was any kind of clear directive with it. Like, so Todd, we can maybe like, you can give me some feedback as maybe somebody who understood it a bit more or whatever. But so the overarching kind of feeling is that she's grieving our passing of her husband, but only in so much that she's guilty about it, because like he obviously commits suicide allegedly, or whatever the kind of question mark about that is. Mm-hmm. So that's what she's going through, and then she goes on this walk like not long after moving into the house, and she only experiences Jeffrey at that point, I think, from what I remember, and then she goes on her walk, and then she comes back, and like the grass is looks like a lot greener and more vivid, and that's when she sees the naked guy for the first time, and then it kind of descends into the Rory Kinnear's faces on everybody and all that kind of stuff. Is that really happening, or is this kind of a like not really happening kind of thing? Because when our mate arrives at the end, and she's just sitting there and she smiles, like, I wasn't sure if the message of that was that she's got peace within herself because of all this happening to her, but not really happen, or did this literally happen and she killed this creature with the axe that was her like impersonating her husband? Like that's as open as it was for me, and I think that's what I kind of disliked about it. I didn't feel that there was a clear directive for me. Was that did that actually happening, or is this all a metaphor and this is her finally with internal peace about the guilt about her husband? She has that kind of reaction to the priest being like, oh, why didn't you let him apologize or whatever, and she just goes, oh, fuck off kind of thing. Like, was that her? I didn't know if that was herself asking that question like through that kind of stuff, or you know what I mean? Like, yeah, because it was so weird that they were all played by Kinnear, I wasn't sure where I stood with that. Like, again, that's maybe me just not misunderstanding or missing cues or whatever, but
no, like I see it I see the whole thing as metaphoric. I don't think there's a creature as such. I don't think it's a supernatural thing. I think the whole nature metaphor is that it's going to keep happening to her. She's going to keep this is a never-ending cycle. It's why
that's the Green Man thing, right?
Yeah.
Green Man's a symbol for like return, like regeneration or whatever.
Nature, yeah, and the idea of him birthing, and it's such a like heavy-handed way to go about it. Is literally like zooming right in and going, watch this creature literally birth another creature, like as close as you can watch it. But yeah, I saw it as just her kind of dealing with her trauma. That's the only way that I saw it. I think these people do exist, like as in there is obviously. I do think she went to a village. I do think that because a friend. And I think that's solidified by her friend going to that village. I do think she's killed somebody. I do think she's met a vicar, Jeffrey. But that if we saw it through the friend's eyes, they would all look different. Like they wouldn't be Rory Kinnear.
Yes. You know. Yeah. So that's what I'm unsure about. Is that her seeing it, and then obviously that's how we see it because of her kind of thing? Okay.
Yeah, and that's why I don't think the film is that. And again, we'll never know this because we don't see it through the friend's eyes or through anybody else's eyes. But that it's not that men are inherently bad, as in like as a gender, as a group of people. I think it's that in Jessie Buckley's eyes, in Harper's eyes, they are, because she's suffered that trauma. Whereas if the film was called Women, which I think would be a very different film because of how men are perceived and how men have treated women and things, then it would be a case of like all the women were Jessie Buckley and Rory Kinnear was the one dealing with the trauma. Does that make sense? Like if it was gender flipped, it would still work exactly the same, just with the genders flipped. It's not anti-men, it's this woman has been put through the ringer. She tries to get away and she can't get away from this trauma. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No,
like,
it's interesting. It's like halfway between what I was thinking that I wasn't sure about or whatever. So
like an open film though, like because the first time I watched it, I saw it at the cinema and I'm pleased I did. Apart from, like I said, that very close up shot of a creature being birthed out of, like, if you haven't seen the film, I don't know why you're still listening if you haven't, because we're spoiling things massively. But like the fact that it's such a close up shot and that both sets of genitals are there, it's male and female. It doesn't have again, and that's why I don't think it's inherently anti-men, because it doesn't have a gender. It's just this creature that is birthed from her trauma, and it keeps going, and that's why eventually it gives birth to her ex-husband. Then it's him.
Okay. I'm okay. It's just a bit ham-handed about it. I think maybe for me.
I do think that, and I think that's why it's not like a 5-star film for me. Like, again, I know we'll get on to ratings and stuff. It's why I love the film. I love the concept. It just, and I want it to be ambiguous. I want it to like drum up this discussion, because I think with all of them, and when we get on to Civil War as well, there is a discussion to be had about what he means and why he's done the things that he's done. But I just think there could have been a little bit more indication as to what happened. Even if it was a case of like, shots from above the village where we see the copper walking around with the female copper, and he's not Rory
everything's
Kinnear.
from her perspective, like everything's involving her. Yeah. There's no shot or anything that doesn't involve her, I think.
Yeah, everything is based around her viewpoint, and what it's like the unreliable. Is it unreliable narrator? Is that how you?
Yeah, that's right.
Like as much as we should be sympathetic towards her because she suffered in a horrible way. Like there's no question about it. She is the victim in this situation. Like we still don't really know because it's all from her perspective.
Got you. Okay.
Again, just my take on it.
Yeah, absolutely. But I knew that you liked this even before we chose Garland, so I was looking forward to maybe getting a bit more context from yourself.
Yep. Okay. Do you want to go into anything else, or I think that was quite a good discussion about men, to be honest.
I'm good.
Yeah, cool. So let's go into ratings then. So Todd, you said it's not a 5-star film, but what did you give it on Letterboxd?
But it is a 4-star film for me.
One of the best films of 2022, quote Todd.
Really?
Yeah, loved it.
Jesus. Collie, what did you give it?
2022 is a good year.
I gave it a 3. And even though before I was like, I could probably knock it down half a star, after discussing it and that, I'm happy with 3.
Fair enough. I gave it a 2-star. I just enjoy it. It is what it is. It's what it is.
I think out of all of them, it's objectively the most. It's the film that I could understand people are giving it half a star on Letterboxd and stuff, and then people are also like going 5-star. It's one of my favorite horrors and all this kind of thing. Like it's the one where I think I'm the most welcoming out of all of these stuff to be like, yeah, okay, I get why you'd never want to watch it again, or you just want to watch it on a loop.
Mm-hmm. So fair enough. Okay, let's move on to the final film in Alex Garland's filmography. So we're moving on to Civil War, which of course was just released this year. So a journey across dystopian future America, following a team of military-embedded journalists as they race against time to reach DC before rebel factions descend upon the White House. Okay, so Collie, thoughts on Civil War?
Yeah, I was like super hyped for this film. I think maybe the fact that I'd seen it before every viewing of June 2 as a trailer might have been something to do with it. But yeah, knowing Garland's past work, even though I hadn't enjoyed maybe the last two that he did, but knowing that he could reach the heights of Ex Machina, I was really, really excited for this. First viewing, I really, really enjoyed it. So I've seen this 4 times. Yeah, first viewing, I was really into it. And then, as we'll get into on subsequent rewatches, I've probably enjoyed it less and less each time for reasons that, yeah, we will discuss. But yeah, overall, was excited for it. Didn't maybe live up to everything that I wanted to, but, you know, a solid addition to his directorography.
Todd?
Yeah, so I've only seen this the once, and I was blown away by it. I immediately came out of it and just kind of dissected it with the lad who I went to see it with. We were just pulling bits of it apart, and in the best possible way, obviously, not shitting on it. It's tense. I think the performances are fantastic. I know we've briefly discussed a little bit, and like obviously we'll get into where it is flawed, but I think moments of this film have sort of took me back more than other films have in a long time. I'm trying not to say too much, but yeah, it was fantastic. Lassie?
Yeah, so I see this once in cinema, and yeah, I'm more leaning towards yourself. Like, I was really hyped for it. I thought it had all the kind of all the sort of recipes to be incredible. But then I enjoyed it, but I couldn't help but feel a bit disappointed with parts of it. But yeah, it was a good film. Again, I after hearing you saying that you've watched it a few times and kind of almost dropped down each time, I'm a bit apprehensive as to go and watch it again in case I do kind of pick up bits that I'm like, no. But yeah, there was things there was things that again we'll touch on that I think could have been done a lot better. But yeah, a pretty good watch, certainly for myself. So as always, let's kind of start off with again the sort of the acting performances. It was kind of there was the main sort of like trio or kind of quad, the four of them really, which was obviously Kirsten Dunst, Wagner Moura, Kaylee Spaney, who I didn't realize that was her, because that's her that does. She was Priscilla, right?
Yep.
I didn't know that was her. I've not seen Priscilla or anything like that. And then we had Steve McKinley Henderson as well. They're the kind of four journalists that kind of go off into this war zones. Thoughts on performances from the four of them, from specific ones. Collie, we'll start with yourself. What do you think of the performances?
Well, I guess without getting... Sorry, I can't not make the point about the film as a whole without discussing the performances. But I'd say for like 90% of this film, I thought Dunst was amazing. And again, like the discussion that we're going to have about the tonal change isn't against her. I think she does very well with everything that is asked. It's probably more of a Garland thing as to why I kind of fell away with it towards the last like maybe 15, 20 minutes. But Dunst herself was great. Her kind of hard-nosed attitude towards Jesse, I felt was perfectly justified because of her experience as a journalist throughout her career. Wagner Moura as Joel, I thought was good, but like as a performance was good, but character-wise, I was maybe a bit confused with him. Kaylee Spaney, I didn't really like her in this, to be honest. I thought some of her delivery was very wooden. I just didn't really click with the vibe of her. Like some of the discussions that she had with Kirsten Dunst were a bit weird. I just didn't really vibe with them. But Stephen McKinley Henderson as Sammy, though, I thought was great. Like, didn't have too much to do, but what he did do, I thought he was excellent. The discussions that they have at the hotel about where they're going, even to his warning about when they're approaching Jesse Plemons as the unnamed soldier later on, when he's kind of warning them off it and stuff like that, I thought was really well delivered by him. So yeah, the main four, overall solid performances. Kaylee Spaney probably not so much. There was one, I will pass this over in a second, but there was one review that I seen of this when like the early press reviews or whatever, and one of the lines was like, "Oh, the campaign for Nick Offerman for Best Supporting Actor starts now." And after having seen this, I don't know what they're talking about. Like, he's good, like, don't get me wrong, but he says, like, I don't know,
8 lines.
4 lines.
yeah, 3 minutes of dialogue in the whole film or something like that. Like, I don't know where the fuck that came from, but for what he was asked to do and what he did, I thought he was excellent though, as well. Just to mention him, and also just on the cast in general, Sonoya Mizuno, who played the British the British reporter, she's been in every one of Garland's films, so I thought that was pretty cool to see her again.
Definitely.
But yeah, anyway, Todd, cast wise, let's have a wee run through.
Yeah, Kirsten Dunst. I don't think I've seen her in a role like this, and I think that was a real sort of like a pleasure to see her like be a bit of a bastard. Not bastard. I keep using that word, but like she was like she hard nosed. Hard nosed is the word, where she's seen shit. She's lived through this, and you kind of get that through her face that she's experienced things you probably wouldn't want to experience, that you wouldn't want to see, and she's done it all for the love of it. And that kind of battle between the two. I thought Wagner Moura was really good. Solid performance. I think it's hard when you've got Kirsten Dunst pulling out what is probably like one of my performances of the year. And like I say, I know we'll get to the shift and stuff. But even so, the way that she is in that film was fantastic. I thought Kaylee Spaney did a really good job. She played the wide-eyed innocent, wanting to get involved. I felt like she played it younger than she was. I got the when they first met her, I got the impression, because I didn't clock that she was Priscilla. Like, I got the impression she was like mid-teens. You know, like I wouldn't have put her in her early 20s. And I think that leans itself into the performance a little bit. Yeah, and Stephen McKinley Henderson was that kind of... You had, like, the different sort of levels of, like, you know, you've got the kid, the adults, and the elder, and, like, that different experience right the way through. I thought they bounced off each other really well. I think the Nick Offerman thing, I've not seen that push for a Best Supporting Actor or whatever. I think it's, like, a sort of... just a fan thing because of The Last of Us, because of like who he is type thing. I think that's where people will be coming from, you know, just to try and drum up some sort of like engagement, maybe, because it's wild. Like, he was a great president, but what did he really have to do? Jesse Plemons, like, it's mental how much people are talking about him. It's wild, but it's deserved because he's such a threat in that moment. Yeah, I thought the cast did a class job, and I think the people around them, like, the world felt real. I didn't feel it, and obviously that's down to the effects and it's down to the set and dressing and all that. But I think the performances felt like people who were in a war zone. And obviously we'll get to some of the scenes in a bit. Yeah, I thought cast-wise, absolutely fantastic. Massey.
Yeah, like, one of the main things that kind of concerned me about the main four was kind of what you said there, Todd, like about Kaylee Spaney. Like, I didn't know what age she was. Like, I had no idea. I think they did mention she was like 23 or something like that, but like at the start I thought she was like a teenager, like at the most 17, 18. Because again, I didn't know who she was, and I'd not seen her as Priscilla and stuff as well. I didn't actually know how old she actually was. And there was moments where there's almost flirting between her and Joel as well, and that I was kind of like, I don't know if that's... I just think it was written poorly for that sort of relationship. I think, or at least, if not written, then the acting didn't give us the exact sort of like clarity that was potentially needed in that sort of relationship. Yeah, I thought she was really strange. But I mean, absolutely, Kirsten Dunst I thought was brilliant. I thought she was fantastic. She was the absolute MVP of the film in my eyes. I thought she was brilliant as you say, the hard nosed. Let's call it a bastard, because she was a bit of a bastard at points. But again, it was like, you could tell that she'd been through like the hard stuff. You could tell that she had the experience in the war zone and the situations, without her being, I was in the war zone and it was bad. It was like like it was all unstated, but we knew that she'd been in that situation, and I thought she played that wonderfully. And yeah, again, Steve McKinley Anderson. It's interesting what you say about the kind of the levels of generations. I think he added a bit of gravitas and a bit of like the sort of like the sort of a bit of common sense to the whole thing, because he had been through obviously the whole thing as well. Had been at it longer than sort of everyone else, so a bit more long in the tooth, we should say. And I was obviously spoiler alert, but I was sad when he eventually got killed, and it came quite out of the blue as well. To be fair, it was one of those things that just sort of happened without much fanfare, and I thought it was an effective way of portraying that, you know, war doesn't really have. It's not all sunshine and roses. You don't get big send offs if you've been at it for years. It could just end there and then, and tough titties basically. But yeah, I thought the main group were good. Again, as I say, I think Kaylee Spenny was the weaker one. Kirsten Dunst was fantastic though. So I know, Collie, you've been wanting to kind of talk about this like sort of tonal shift that was kind of like happened in the last sort of like last sort of tail end of the film. Do you want to discuss what you sort of like mean about the characterization?
We could probably talk through the film up until maybe the Jesse Plemons type thing.
Okay.
And then that's where the kind of the first of the two shifts for me happened. So if we're going to just talk about the cinematography in general, I do think this is an amazingly shot film. Like one of the early shots, I think it's when they actually bring up the title card and it's sweeping across like the outskirts of New York. You can see all the green, but then you can see into Manhattan, and that I thought that was incredible. I thought that was amazing, and just on that as well, the soundtrack I thought to the film was excellent as well. Bringing in the music, and that was great. So the opening scene of the suicide bomber at the kind of, I think they're handing out food or water. I can't remember exactly what it was.
Water,
at the kind of cart with the police and stuff, and then she just tears in. It's weird that like Kirsten Dunst like clicks that's going to happen, and obviously pulls Kaylee Spaney away. I thought one of the highlights of the film, like not long after that, was the discussion in the hotel. I thought that was really good banter between the three of them, because yeah, Sammy's like, oh, where he is going, and Joel's just like, fuck you, because he knows exactly what he's asking. I thought that was all good. So it was a bit of a trivia actually that I noted down. Just we're going to move on to the Spaney and Dunst kind of thing, but Kaylee Spaney's a admitted big fan of Dunst. Like growing up, she was one of the main. Again, I don't know if you're just saying this because you're in a film with her, but it was one of her main influences to become an actress. Apparently, was Kirsten Dunst. So she was able to work with her, and I think they were using her kind of fandom of Dunst as Jesse's fandom of Lee, that kind of thing. So their first conversation was like, "Oh, your first name's the first name of my hero," or something like that, and she says, "Oh, I can't remember who she names as her hero. An old photographer though from the early 20th century, I believe." Who was like a war photographer, and then she's like, I know who that is, and it's like, well, obviously she would know who that is, so what a weird thing to kind of say, and that's kind of a bit of a red flag for me about that early interactions. I don't know if you've got thoughts on that first couple of scenes before we move on.
Todd?
So, like, for me, it was just a case of I couldn't relax after that suicide bombing. Like, it felt like this was a nice introduction to the character, to the characters, and then all of a sudden, you're in a place where I didn't think there was going to be... There was tension, but there wasn't threat, and I think that's the massive difference. And out of nowhere, even when they ran in with a flag, I was still like, oh, there's just some fucking idiot. Do you know, like, it didn't immediately scream fear, it didn't scream terror, and then all of a sudden, the bomb goes off, and I think from there, you can't relax in this film. Like, and I think that was a massive part of it. I kind of get the interaction about, of course you know it, but like of course you know that old photographer. I just think it was a case of like, because you're so starstruck and you don't know where to put yourself, you just say any old shit that like will impress this person, and it just kind of, it would have been in another Kirsten Dunst character, she'd be like, yeah, of course, I love this photo and I love that photo and this is where instead she was just like, of course, I know he is. Yeah, of course I know he. Like, and I think it set up the dynamic nicely. I think it set it up really well. But yeah, I like the fact that like you've got these established relationships as well, like you say that Wagner Murray's character knows like what he's after and knows what he wants. Yeah, I thought they were really solid and like a really good opening. Like I said, that I couldn't relax for the entire thing.
I did like the sort of bits of world building as well, where like when they're in the hotel and she's going to go to her bed and they talk about how they have power cuts, so maybe don't use elevators and stuff like that. Like I thought that was quite a subtle bit, a way of telling that, you know, although in this hotel, this is where the press are and everything's seems all rosy just now, where they're talking over drinks and stuff, it's not quite as, you know, like underneath like the facade of everything being okay, there's still that kind of level of danger or not quite, everything's not 100%, if that makes sense. So I thought that was a quite an interesting way of doing things. Yeah, sorry, Collie. So after the hotel, where's it we go again?
So after that, it's the interaction when they're outside the Jeep. When he notices, when Lee notices that Jesse's in the car. She's kind of like, "What the fuck to Joel?" And that's when I kind of on the point that you made, Massey. It's like he's like a bit weird about like, "Oh, I've got this young girl along with us. Like, what's the issue?" kind of thing. And the dynamic between Joel and Lee, I thought was even weird because like there was never a hint of really being romantic. It was always friendly, or like you know, long-term colleagues, friends, known each other for a long time, which we'll come back to at the end of the film, as a bit of a thing that took me out of it. But yeah, that was a bit of a weird interaction. But I thought the shot like through the car of Sammy and Jesse sitting in the car while you can hear them talking at the back, I thought that was quite cool because they're both just sitting there like. They just like looking about and stuff. I thought that was quite cool. And yeah, then the first kind of next shocking scene is when they get to the gas station and there's the guys being hung by their hands and being tortured for being looters by these folk. I thought the interaction of $300 to get you a sandwich, we've got ham or cheese. I thought that was quite cool. And she said Canadian, and that obviously again the world building of it is that the dollars through the floor and any other currencies through the roof probably subsequently. That was cool. But yeah, like the whole interaction of her wandering around on her own to the guys hanging, which was fine, like because she was like, "Oh, I just seen something for the road," and the interaction with that guy was again like fine because it was just showing how much society had descended. But so an overarching kind of thing on this film is that the time scale, not just of the journey that we view, but in general. So the president, from what I remember, the president's in his third term.
Yeah.
And he's not spoken to the press for 14 months or something like that. So this has probably happened in a 2-year period or something like that, like at the most, if not a year and a half. This descent into anarchy, essentially, within the country. People are killing people willy-nilly. There's no apparently law like our like police or anything like that, especially out with the major cities. So for them to vigilante against looters again, I guess is fine, as you could say, and the whole interaction of him being like, "Oh, what should I do with them?" and stuff, again, fine, and then Jesse being like all shaken up in the car after it and upset, and Lee being hard nosed about it. I'm like, that tonally fits what we've been told so far. That's the tone that we should carry out forward. Was there anything that stood out with that scenes with you? This is kind of, we're doing this film a bit differently because it's not that fresh in my head because I watched it in the cinema and as did you, but that's why we're kind of doing it scene by scene. But the reason I wanted to do that is because I want to tell you like exactly where I felt like it fell away for me rather than just doing general.
Yeah, no.
Straight to the
yeah.
So
I completely agree, and I think as well, this is again where for me it was like the age of her I wasn't sure of. So like why they just letting her wander off on her own and stuff. That was kind of things that took it a bit out for me as well. It's like why are they just letting her sort of do her thing if she's meant to be like what I thought at the time was like 17, 18, like surely someone goes with her, blah blah blah, that sort of thing. But yeah, but I totally agree. I think the tonal side of it is like it's not nice. So yeah, that's where I was with that. Yeah.
So this is where I thought like Kaylee Spinney came into her own Like I enjoyed what she did. Sorry, I feel like at the beginning when I said like about that, I feel like I said she wasn't very good. I thought she was excellent. I just think maybe it's on the writing, or maybe it's like on her performances. She's a bit too wide-eyed. But once they said that she's in her 20s, I was just like, okay, she's just a very young-looking mid-20 lass. Does that make like so? Yeah. Then, but also I think like the letting her wander off on her own. I think that's the world that they live in. Is kind of like they just like, do you know what? Like we're here. We have to kind of survive. We have to just get on with it. She's going to wander off. She's going to wander off. I have no emotional connection to this kid. She's here because we kind of, she's been dragged along type thing. I thought they did that the hanging from the car wash was a great idea. Like, I love that they utilize these very basic semen things for such horrific, do you know what I mean? Such a horrific way. And yeah, I love that she was, like, again, when you talk about her performance, how shaken she was, like, how that hit her. She just wanted to run away. She just wanted to turn her back and leave. But then obviously Lee didn't want her to turn her back and leave because she wants, right, if you're here for this, you have to be part of it. You have to actually understand how this works. This is the world now that we live in. It's not just like clicking photos. Yeah, so it really worked for me. It really worked for me.
Yeah,
but like you said, it worked for you too.
I think at this point, I'm fully on board with the way that she's portraying her and stuff. I think like she's doing great. Like the interaction, I think was just like the delivery of the lines was a bit off when I'm talking about the hotel scene prior. But in terms of like how she's portraying Jessie, I think she's doing great at this point. And then the next bit, like exactly you were hinting at there, Todd, when Lee's just like, look, like I'll take you under my wing kind of thing. That's the whole helicopter crash scene in the car park. I thought was really good. She was helping her like take photos and how you should take photos. I thought that was really good. And then I think without having it noted down from like step by step is the next bit at nighttime. Is the next bit at nighttime when they're interacting and they're sitting on the sofa and you see the gunfire in the sky, which I thought was amazing.
That was cool. Yeah.
Like the tracers in the sky, and that was good. And this is when I quite like Joel at this bit. He was just like, "Oh, like this gets me so hard." Is one lines that he says when he's looking at the gunfire, and they have the discussion about, "Oh, we'll go there in the morning if it's still ongoing." But yeah, as part of the scene is kind of what you hinted at, Massey. The relationship was a bit weird. So they're in the back of the car, and he's just like, "Oh, unless you want company," and she's like, "I don't want company." He's like, "Well, I'm here if you want company." Like, it was just a weird dynamic that was established between the two of them. Because I would say for him, he must be in his like mid-40s or something like that, like early to mid-40s or something character-wise, and this lass is like 20 years young. I don't know. He's just as good as a character as he was apparently supposed to be and portrayed. I thought. Like he was quite a good character, like moralistically and stuff. Yeah. There was that aspect of it that kind of I just didn't like, and I don't really know why it was written. He could have just been like Lee and been like a big brother or an uncle or whatever to Jessie, but there was that, or a father figure, like just that seediness of it. I didn't like that. That's a very good point raised about that. So. Just about the helicopter scene and maybe that interactions, is there anything else that you guys wanted to add to that?
I think I can't remember exactly if this happened at that scene or if it was like later on, but like the camera started doing stuff like it was almost like a photo camera, like it was like it was like blurring out the background of some things. Again, I can't remember if it was exactly this or what it was, because I feel like it started after she like kind of got into the swing of being like a photographer, a war photographer. But are you meaning the shots of like Kirsten Dunst looking in the mirror and stuff like that when they're driving about, or is it just photos in general? Yeah, not the so like there was photos often interspliced and stuff as well, but like there was like scenes where the filming camera acted almost like a photo camera and focused on the subject and did kind of blur out a bit of the back. It was almost like it was in like a portrait mode sort of thing. Again, I can't remember if it was that was exactly at that point or if it was just a little bit later potentially, but it seemed to be when Jessie was picking up more how to photograph things, that when Kirsten Dunst was showing her how to do that helicopter thing. Oh, okay. It might be something to look out for. It might just be that I was just like, I didn't pick up on that. I'll have to look out for it. Yeah. But in terms of the actual scene, not much more to add on that one, to be perfectly honest. Todd?
Yeah, no, I'm the same. I think it was a nice sort of a nice introduction to like how Lee can help Jesse and stuff. I thought again, world building, great world building in terms of like there are just these military vehicles just scattered around the place.
Yeah, the
In front
abandoned
of
highway that had been like carpet bombed or
Oh,
something by
yeah,
the look
yeah.
of it. I thought that was cool.
yeah, and was it JC Penney? Was that the shop that they were in front of?
Oh, it might have
Like
been in the car park with a helicopter. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was like a big American store, and like that kind of stood out in terms of like, all right, so we're in the world. You know, again, reminder: this is the world that we live in. Maybe it's a little bit further in the future, but not a lot. We're not rear guns and shit. It's literally like this shop existed. I thought that was really cool as well. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was great. And then we move on to the morning after that nighttime scene, and it's when they're kind of first in the battle, in the action with the Western Front, kind of against the actual soldiers, and it's when it fucking blew my ears off with the gunfire. The gunfire in this film was so loud, which I thought was a very effective tool. But oh my god, like the cut from nighttime to that, and it's the guy standing behind the pillar we're getting shot at, and all around the corner, and Joel's got Jesse's like backpack or back of her jacket or whatever, or the vest, and he's letting her like peek around the corner and keeps pulling her back. I thought that was a big development in terms of Jesse and Lee's dynamic, and when the guy comes around the corner, he's shot and they're trying to heal him up. Jesse's taking photos and Lee just crouches down beside her and watches her take photos. I thought that was pretty cool as kind of a mentor kind of thing. And then there's so I watched a video and it was all about like the gun, or not just the gun stuff in this film, but like the kind of tactical planning and stuff like that. If it was like all realistic military stuff, and like, I think the guy took it a bit serious in terms of these people aren't perhaps trained soldiers. These are more militiamen and stuff that we're trying to see. So when they're walking in the building and you can hear the guy crying, but they're all being like really, really quiet, and then they all turn on their lights before they go in the room, and he's like, you wouldn't do that because you don't know what's in the room and you're giving away your position. But that whole scene of them going out the window and you can hear the crying, you're like, what the fuck are we away to walk into? And then it's just the guy on the ground, and they don't even like speak to him pretty much. They're just like bang and shoot him dead. And then there's the kind of eye-opening bit straight after where you see the prisoners getting led about, and you're, they've got like some folk that they've captured or whatever, and then Joel's talking to the like head militiamen, and they're like laughing and stuff and joking about. There's the music playing in the background, and all of a sudden it cuts to these three guys with sacks on their head getting machine gunned by a fucking big like LMG type thing, and there's a guy behind it just like obviously really enjoying it. And that was a further step, not just after the car wash scene, but like this one, it's like, yeah, they're not fucking about. There's no Geneva Convention here or anything like that. It's like, it's side versus side. It's man versus man kind of thing. So that was quite eye opening. And it kind of showed the, I guess, like impartiality, I guess, of the journalists, that they were purely there to record. Even though Joel's, I thought, playing about and like joking with the guy after it. I don't think he was doing that because he perhaps politically agrees with them, but it's just like he's just there to capture what's happening, kind of thing. So that was kind of the first action sequence, I would probably say, apart from maybe the opening scene with the bomb. But that was the first like gunplay, and that was the first like combat that we've seen. And that, just to go on to that, that's kind of where this film kind of zigged, where it was like maybe marketed as more of a zag in terms of, this isn't a combat film. This isn't a film about a civil war in terms of the action side versus side. You know what each side's doing. It's very ambiguous and apolitical, and deliberately so. Purely like from a not just like what the commentary that what Garland wants to say, but also I think it's a very smart thing to do in terms of A24 to be like, they don't want the right wing to get into the film. They don't want the left wing to get. They portray the film that they portray, and they don't tell you like who the president's for. They don't tell you who the Western Front, how they ally. Like, the alliance was brought upon between Texas and California, and that's a big stickler for a lot of people. I think, like, in what world would Texas and California like unite with each other? And I get that. That's absolutely fine. I do understand that to an extent. But then I think Garland in a few interviews is like, that shows you how bad this is. That there's this fascist, civilian killing, media killing dictator president who's obviously broken the law by being in his third term, That's how bad it is that they've then united to ally politically to then go and to kind of take him down, kind of thing. So it's a very smart thing, I think, in Garland's way. But I understand why people's frustration is that there's no black and white version of this film. There's no combat orientated. It's because I don't even think in the trailers it's really showing that it's a purely war journalist perspective. I don't think. I was kind of not taken aback by that in a bad way, but I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's what I was going to get to see, because a lot of the trailer was like the footage of the fighting in Washington and stuff, and like even the main poster of it is the flame of the Statue of Liberty with snipers in it. And that's what the video that I was watching with the guy with the gun. He was like, that was like so like deceptive marketing and stuff like that. Like he's like, oh, why? And then he's like, why would it even be in the Statue of Liberty? It's on an island. How's that tactically sound? I'm like, it's obviously like an allegory. It's obviously like a metaphor that the liberty of America and the kind of political nature of America has been taken over by these fighting forces. I thought that was quite obvious, but he was taking that as like a literal sniper sitting in the Statue of Liberty.
And I think as well, the fact that you're saying there was about the fact that the Western forces are Texas and California, and how they're like basically diametrically opposed, like actually in real life. I think for me anyway, that gave me the sort of like ability to be like, it's a fictional world, you know what I mean? Because it's like they're, you know, California's such a liberal, like democratic, sorry, and Texas is all like the gun-toting Republican and that sort of things. So I think that's quite a shame that people are going to, but take it that seriously, because it is clearly a fictional United States.
You say that, but it is set, like Todd was saying before, in the real world, in the near future. So I can understand why people are like how does that even happen? But I don't really explain it away as like, oh, it's fiction. I took it more literally as like, fucking hell, this must be bad if they're politically aligning. I wasn't writing it off as like, oh, you can do what he wants because it's fiction, because it is set in the real world. It is set in the near future or present times, within either the past 5 years or the next 5 years. Like, this is when it's set, you know. So I get your point about writing it off as that, but I kind of was more of the thinking of was like, that shows how bad it is.
Yeah, because I mean, I suppose, well, with another thing that I kind of thought about making it fictitious was the fact that the president served 3 terms. So obviously they can only do 2 terms.
Yeah, but that speaks to how illegal he is being, and how fascistic he's being.
Yeah, totally. No, that's fair, absolutely fair. Yeah.
Trump threatened that, like, not to get political, but Trump threatened that during his tenure, that he would like, I'll just do 3 terms, and everyone laughed it off. But they were also like, well, is he going to try and change the law? And like, is there enough people that could vote that in and stuff like that? So obviously, at some point in this universe, that did happen.
That's happened.
Imagine they cast Trump instead of Nick Hoffman. How good would that be?
Yeah, anyway, we're not going to go down that route, but it's something that has been mentioned in real life, and it just kind of, for me, showed the illegality, that word, of his presidential term. But anyway, Todd, before we move on, is there anything about that first kind of combat sequence that you wanted to talk on? Apart from it being really loud?
So before I saw it, all I asked was, is it really as loud as people are saying? And I didn't see it in IMAX, and fucking hell, my bones rattled. But it was class. It was all the better for it. Like, it's still at the cinema. People need to see it as in a big screen as possible. I love the fact that Joel jumped at the machine gun. Like, when the gun first went off, it wasn't focused on the actual gun or the prisoners. It was focused on Joel. Like, nobody else did. Like, in the shot, they were all expecting it. They knew it was coming. And I just think it was that, again, laid into that impartiality. And we'll get to it, because I think it's a big part of it was the discourse around, is it a centrist film? Is it like, you know... but I love the fact that it just showed like he wasn't expecting it to happen. You know, it was a lovely little shot. I just thought it was class. I thought the movement and the use of the camera stills I thought was genius. Like, every time it happened, I'm saying, fucking hell, what? Like, every single time. I just think it's sort of, you're seeing it from a journalist's perspective anyway, but now you're seeing it directly from their you know, like when you say people have got the eye for photography, like you are seeing it directly from their eye, and I thought that was genius. I might be jumping ahead, and I apologise if I am. The guy burning in the tyre, is that prior to this or after this?
That's happened already, because I think that's when Lee has the bath, I think, in the hotel.
She's remembering.
And she's thinking back, actually. Sorry, yeah, we skipped over that. That's a very good point about her old flashbacks to her war stuff.
And it was just more like because it's brutal enough to see somebody get captured, put in a tyre, and set alight, and they don't shy away from that either. Like, that's there for the full time. But it's the fact that, again, it uses those clicks, the noise, and the noise, again, is loud. It's not as loud as the gunshots, but it's still loud. And it's so still for that. What feels like it's 5 or 6 seconds. It's half a second. It's on and it's off. It's a shutter speed, but like it just sits with the air. And I think, like I said, that they were used really, really well. Especially in this bit where you're watching them kind of rolling around, dying, and she's getting the shots in. Yeah, sorry, Massey, go on.
No, it's calling.
Oh.
Yeah, I think it's just back onto me. But yeah, sorry, just about the Joel jumping thing. I think there was a bit of the trivia that I read that they used full blanks or something like that in this film, which sounds exactly as loud as guns do. Whereas I think in other films they use like quarter blanks or half blanks, which like lessens the noise or something like that. But for this, they use like full just to kind of give that realism for the actors. So yeah, briefly touching on the next scene that I remember is when they're in that stadium. And Jesse and Lee are sitting in the kind of the stands talking, and again, like maybe I'm being a bit harsh on it. And from your point earlier, talking about she doesn't really know what to say because she's a bit starstruck. But by this point, they've been around each other for 24 hours, 36 hours, 40 hours, or whatever, a couple of days. So when she's just like, body temperature for the like
the
fluid for developing photos, I was just like, oh, fuck off. Like, of course, like Lee's gonna know that kind of thing. So I just, again with that, it's just like, I feel like I'm being really harsh on Kayla Sweeney because she's a great actress. Like in Priscilla, she's excellent, but in this, I don't know, it just felt hammy as fuck. Like the majority of the conversations. And even like Kirsten Dunst, when they're looking through the photo, she's like, "That's a really great fucking photo," or something like that. It just, I don't know. Like the dialogue in this, by far for me, is Garland's weakest, I would say. But that's by the by. So there wasn't really much to talk about in that scene. Again, it's just a development of the mentor kind of discussion. Is there anything else that you want to kind of touch on with that?
No.
I say
it's more about the next part. I think it is. Yeah, the next part. I was gonna.
Okay, well, you can move us on to the next part.
Yeah, the next part, like, is when they go to this. They move on to this like little town that seems like quite idyllic and like out of it all, and they
Twilight Zone.
Yeah, and they go to this shop, and this is where the dialogue is so weird because I feel like it's trying to say something, but it's not saying that much at all. It's when they talk to the person that's behind the counter in the clothes shop, and they're like, there's like a really big civil war going on there. And she's like, yeah, we try to keep out of it though. And like it's just like so weird, and like so, again, thinking about the tone of the film, it's just so tonally different. And that was one of the things that I was like, this is very strange. I know obviously we find out there's still like snipers on top of buildings and stuff. So they're aware of the things that are happening, but it just felt like a really weird distraction in this clothes shop, and then trying on like the hats, and don't get me wrong, it was funny. Some of the stuff that they said to each other was quite funny, but it just again felt like a total. It felt like a different film. It felt almost like a comedy film. So yeah, that was kind of a weird part for me.
The bit when she's taking the photo, right? You're really pretty when you smile.
Yeah,
like she smiles. I'm just like, oh my god.
Yeah.
It just felt really cheesy. It just felt really cheesy. Like in the trailer, you'd seen that interaction with the shopkeeper like loads, in terms of like there's a big civil war going on, which is fine. Like I thought that was a weird wee snapshot into how some people were getting on with it. Which is fine, but yeah, like the whole wearing the dress interaction and stuff was a bit like, is it needed? I guess as a relationship kind of mover on or kind of type scene, like developer, I guess. But yeah, it was just a bit like, yeah, like whatever.
Again, it almost erred on like the sexual side of things. Like this is where like, you know, Kaylee Spady is a bit more like, oh, you look really pretty in that dress. You're great with your smell. Like that's
I didn't
like,
get that. I did not get that. I'm afraid.
no, I'm not saying it was. I'm not saying she was like, but like
in your mind it was then.
yeah.
Okay, hell, man.
I closed my eyes at that part and I just listened to it. No,
That's
but like
enough.
it just felt like that, and like this is where when we didn't know, I wasn't quite sure of her age and stuff like that. I was just like, it just feels like a weird thing to be saying to like someone that's like a bit older than you. It felt kind of flirty, and I was like, yeah, no.
Well, I thought it was just a women supporting women type thing. Like,
oh, okay. Mr. Social Justice Warrior.
no, it's just like
I stand
it's
with you,
weird
women.
because she was like, "Oh, it's what did Lee say?" She was like, "Oh, it's weird to see yourself in front of the mirror in the first time in ages or whatever."
Yeah.
Like I thought that was just them being that, and then to be fair, that was one of the funnier scenes was when he comes over,
With
Joe
his
comes
hat.
over with a hat.
Yeah.
It's just like, "Oh, do you want to take a photo?" He's like, "Oh, I'm just out of film or whatever." He's like, "That's mean." I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
I thought that was
Agreed.
good.
Agreed.
But again, that's the kind of relationship I thought they would have, is like a jovial kind of kinship kind of thing, not this kind of weird Joel Jesse dynamic. But yes, anyway, I think are you wanting to say anything about that, Todd? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, just because I know like you two were a bit like we were, but I loved it. It felt very much, and maybe this is a bit. And again, I've only seen it once. Maybe this is a bit of a inapt comparison, but it felt like Joel and Ellie in The Last of Us at the museum. I know it wasn't, because obviously there's snipers and stuff, but it's that moment of respite that they get. It's the only time where they get that sort of like, they get to be people again. Like they're not in this war zone, they're in this fucking alternate universe where it's not happening, or they feel like it's not happening until they see the snipers.
Don't talk about the museum or I'll cry, I swear.
And I know it's hard, isn't it? It's, sorry if you've not played The Last of Us 2. But yeah, like it's that. The other comparison again is The Last of Us, just with it being like, that's all, is the giraffes in the first Last of Us game. Like you get that moment where for a second they forget that they're in the middle of a war, they forget that, you know, what's going on around them, and then all of a sudden when they see the snipers on the roof, they remember actually nowhere's safe, nowhere's okay. So yeah,
Actually, it's like everything I remembered kind of thing.
Yeah.
At least it's like everything I forgot, and he's like, I'd remember it just the same.
Yeah, I think it was a clever way of sort of giving them time to breathe as characters a little bit more and sort of flesh them out a little bit. But on to the next bit, which Collie, go on.
Sorry, is that everything we're wanting to say about that?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the next bit is the sniper battle in the field, which I thought was a fine little interaction. I seen that Alex Garland, like, those weren't made for the film or anything like that. He just came across them that was like a Christmas fair abandoned, and he treated that as like, you know, like everything's going on, so they're just like having to continue without even taking down the Christmas decorations, which I thought was quite a strange thing. But that fucking made me jump out my seat the first time, when they're just like, okay, we'll just move a little bit forward, and you see obviously the dead soldier in the street, and then you're bang, and it's just like the windshield getting shot or the car getting shot in general. They have to pull in. So that was, again, it was an interesting little dynamic. I don't really know, not the purpose of it, but it was just a bit like, it was a scene, and then that's it. Like there was kind of the weird, like, dreamy moment where Lee was lying down in the grass, and she's like looking at like little bluebells or something like that, little flowers or something, and Jesse's in the background, and then it's like zones out, and she's only looking at like the flowers. I thought that was a bit bizarre. But yeah, it was fine. I don't really have no real notes about this. It was just kind of, this is where you kind of continue to see the fluorescent pink, blue, and green of the WF, obviously on the guy's fingernails and their hair is spray painted. You kind of seen that in the original sequence that they came across them with the gunfire and stuff. You see it on the wall, kind of signifying the Western forces, I believe. So that was my only real note that I took on that. I've got not too much to discuss. I didn't think it really brought the story forward too much. It was just another little, here's a bit of action kind of thing. You guys got anything to add on that one?
No, I think there was a couple of interactions between Joel and the soldiers and Jesse. I think when there was like, it was kind of like a bit of a jovial moment, wasn't it? They were talking about like, oh, what's in that house up there? Because like Joel wasn't quite understanding that there was like a sniper or something, or like he didn't it was like he didn't quite grasp the fact that there was
He was
someone
like, what's
shooting.
going on? And he asks
Yeah.
Jesse, he's like, what's that? He's like, a guy shooting, and he just
Yeah.
looks at him like,
Yeah,
like yeah.
like
And then the other guy's like, guys, you shut the fuck up, and then he shoots him.
like that was the only thing I can think from that was like that was actually quite funny and stuff. But yeah, I suppose that, again, maybe that shows a bit of Jessie kind of getting more into the mindset of it's a war zone. Like, you know what I mean? She's the one that's aware that, you know, not thinking about anything else apart from the fact that they're under fire kind of thing.
It's around about this sequence. I can't remember where they discuss it off the top of my head, but this is when they have the discussion about, if like Jesse asks Lee, if I was shot or being killed, I was killed, would you take my photo? And then Lee just goes, well, what do you think? Which obviously we will get to. It's replayed, but I just thought it worth mentioning that interaction was around about here.
Yeah,
Can't remember if that was like directly after the snipers. I think it might have been.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's. Todd, do you have anything to add about the kind of Christmas sniper type scene?
No, like I just felt like I couldn't breathe through the whole thing. I don't know. Like again, it might be different on a second watch, but as soon as that first shot went off, like you say, I like again, bones rattling, jumping out of my skin, and then I felt like I couldn't. I wanted to hold my breath to stay as quiet as possible. And sorry, that's the other thing as well, just on the camera clicks and all that kind of thing. When I watched it at the cinema, people were quieter during this film, like when those clicks were going off, than they were during A Quiet Place. Like, and you know that level of silence. Like, we were in it was a packed cinema, and it was deathly silent. And I think it was like some of the shock of some of it. Sorry, that's just going back to the camera clicks and stuff. But yeah, I thought I get what you mean. It moved it on. Somebody made a comparison on Letterboxd, and this kind of makes me think about it. What was the film that we've done recently on here where somebody said, and you brought it up, Collie, where it felt like a video game?
1917.
1970. So somebody compared the two in that it's like, here are our characters moving from level to level to level to level, and this was just another level in this game. And like, I get that. Again, I loved it. Loved this scene. Thought it was tense. I like the interactions. Yeah, but it definitely does feel like that. And again, not in a bad way. I really enjoy the fact that we're just seeing these people live their lives through this.
That definitely felt more like in this film than 1917 to me. That it was like this happens and then this happens and then this happens and then this happens, which is fine. That's how a film works. But I felt a bit more. It was, but I think that was a deliberate choice. It was like just showing you all these interactions as they're making their journey from New York to DC, which was fine. I didn't think it took me out of the film or anything like that. But I felt. Obviously, I knew about that comparison with 1917, and watching this, I was like, oh, maybe this. I was like, I feel more about like that about this film than I ever did about 1917. But yeah. Anyway, we move on to the next mission in the campaign. Sorry, I mean,
We've got the last achievements. Let's move on.
So this is the main sequence I think that we're going to talk about. Is that they're driving along. There's a car chasing them, and you're like, oh, what the? Or a car coming up on behind them. You're like, oh shit, like what's happening here? And it turns out that it's their pals. And the guy jumps from one car to another. And again, Kaylee Spaney with it. Oh my god, I need to do that.
Yeah,
it's like,
I want to live
like,
too.
yeah, and then the guy fucks off, and then it's Anyway, this happens. They come across the car. Car's been pulled over or stopped or whatever. Nobody in the car, and then you encounter Jesse Plemons as uncredited soldier. And so I know this scene is about 7 minutes, I think, from when they first interact with each other. I think I can't remember exactly when I started counting, but I checked it when I was watching it the third time or whatever it was, and it's about 7 minutes. And this, Todd, like I agree, for the whole film I was like on the edge of my seat, but for this I genuinely felt like my heart was going to explode. Like I was like, something's happening. Like this is going to go wrong. This is the kind of the focal piece of the film because it was advertised as such. And I deliberately didn't really mention Jesse Plemons during the cast thing because I knew we were going to talk about him here. But oh my god, like he's unbelievable here, and he wasn't even cast in this role. Somebody pulled out, and then he got cast because Dunst said to Garland that she think obviously biased because it's her husband, but she was like, "Oh, Jesse Plemons would be good for this." So then he gets cast, and he did it in one day or something like that, and he didn't break character the whole time he was on set or something. he just like didn't speak to anybody. He didn't interact with any of the cast beforehand, especially because he just wanted to come into this fresh. So yeah, so there's the whole, like we were talking about earlier, the Sammy scene about like, this means death. I thought that was a really good line when he's warning them off. They're like, oh no, we're going to go over, and he just like hangs about at the back, rightfully so, very smart man. But they go over, and Joel's like, oh, these are colleagues of ours, and what kind of colleagues are these? And it's all journalists. It's like this guy, and there's a few other lines, but it's like this guy. It's the driver on his knees, and he just shoots him. He just out of nowhere just goes bang, kills the guy, and that's when it's like everyone's like on edge. Jesse's on her knees already, like just quivering, shaking, crying, whatever, like all the bad stuff. And that's when the whole "what kind of American are you" discussion comes in, and yeah, like obviously you'd seen that in the trailer, but I didn't really realize in first watch like where the conversation was going to go, or I knew where the conversation was going to go to an extent, but it's when he goes around and asks everybody, and then Joel eventually answers Florida, Jesse's like Missouri, and Lee is Colorado, I think. And it's when he talks about Missouri and Colorado, he's like, that's America. It's the way he's got his arms crossed with a gun in his arms like that when he's talking to them. He's not pointing it or anything like that. He's like, that's America. His delivery was impeccable. I thought it was incredible. He's like, this is proper America. And then obviously he goes across to Bobby. I think was his name. Was his name Bobby? I think it was Bobby. Or Tony, sorry. I think Bohai, sorry, was the guy who was killed first. Then it was Tony, is the guy here. And he's like, oh, where are you from? And he says Hong Kong. And he's like, also China. And then just point blank. As soon as he says Hong Kong, it's like, R.I.P. in pieces for that guy. Like, it's just, it's like, so China. And there was, and when he said like China like that, it kind of showed for me, like, obviously his ignorance about it, because when you look into the Hong Kong's history, it was in China for a bit, and like all that kind of stuff. So he just was like, oh, that's China, then I'll shoot you because you're Chinese. And then that's obviously with the kind of culmination of the scenes when Sammy comes across. So I've kind of broken down the scene step by step, but like, what were your thoughts and feelings watching it? What stood out? What did you think of it? I'll go to Massey first because he always goes last. But Massey.
I mean, it's really hard to say much more about Jesse Plemons. I thought he was unbelievable, like genuinely, like so menacing without hamming it up or without like being like over the top. And for some reason, those red like sunglasses, it's almost like he's like looking through the color of blood, like whenever he's like interacting with someone. Yeah, I thought he was unbelievable, and that's really interesting to find out that when you said that he did that in a day and he like stayed in character, didn't speak to anyone and stuff like that. Obviously, with even his wife being in the film, I'm assuming he probably, with the professionalism of him and know what kind of actor he is, he probably even didn't speak to her, I'm assuming. So like that's really interesting to hear. It was just so tense, like just how sort of like the camera was unflinching as well, like when he was shooting, when he was just discriminately I suppose shooting the other people, the ones that did get shot, like it didn't pull away. We got to see the whole thing that happened, and I thought it was a really wonderful in terms of like a really good scene. I picked up on that Hong Kong thing that you said as well, the fact that Hong Kong actually isn't, or there's a lot more to it than just China, and that kind of like, as you say, shows the ignorance of him. But yeah, I thought it was a incredible scene from start to finish. And 7 minutes, it didn't feel like 7 minutes. It felt like the best part of half an hour with how tense that was, and I was gripping onto my seat the whole time and stuff. But yeah, I thought it was a brilliant scene. Todd?
Yeah, not a lot to add to it. It was one of those where you look and think, how are they going to get out of it? How does this end without them dying? Because yeah, he's shooting people for not being American, but he's not all there. He's not right. He's gonna end up killing somebody else. Feel sorry for Kirsten Dunst, like on that day at the very least, just trying to find out like what's the plans for tea and that. Jesse Plemons just stood there still with his gun, being like, "What kind of American?
What kind of tea are you?
Not Chinese."
Yeah, good point. Yeah. American meatloaf.
Burgers.
But yeah, he's excellent, and I think, like you say, it just felt like it went on forever, and again, not in a bad way. It didn't drag. It just felt like you were there forever with them. And the way that it like sort of ended, that scene ending with Sammy driving his car into them, was like, it was a proper like sort of, I was like fist pump moment, like, and I think it gave him a level of, not that he didn't have purpose in the beginning, but he's always sort of the last one in. He's always because he's the older one. He doesn't have that sort of. He's not dragging Jesse back in the in that shooting scene. He's not there. So for him to have that moment of sort of triumph before, obviously, like you say, he dies is massive. So, but yeah, I thought it was phenomenal. And you say, what if that other actor, whoever that was, didn't pull out? Would it have been as effective? I don't think it would have, because Jesse Plemons is the man. Like, he's fantastic. Yeah,
agreed. So moving on to the aftermath of this scene is they're in the car. Jesse's puking everywhere. Her and Joel are just looking at each other in the backseat, and they're like screaming, but there's no audio on it. Like, it's just ringing. I think it was from the soundtrack. I think it was just like the ringing of the aftermath of that. And then Sammy says that he can't drive because he's been shot, which is obviously shocking to us as a viewer, and obviously for them. And then there's this the dreamlike sequence of them driving through this big fire with the embers and stuff flying about, and I was just like, I just felt like the urgency of your mate's being shot, and that, like, it removed me out from it a little bit. I didn't really understand the kind of the context within the story kind of deal. I thought they'd be going like, full bore, like, let's get Sammy saved kind of thing, but they're like, maybe because of the film it was slow motion or something like that. Maybe they were going ham, but it just felt very, I've used this word already, but ethereal, kind of otherworldly, like driving through this. What did you think about that scene? It looked beautiful, like, don't get me wrong, it looked beautiful, but in terms of the story, I didn't quite get it. Maybe I missed something, but
yeah, I mean, I agree. I wonder if it was maybe potentially that their world was metaphorically burning around them because they've lost one of their group. I don't know, but yeah, I was the same as you. I was kind of just like, just get him to somewhere and give him some help. But you're right. It looked wonderful. I don't know exactly what the meaning behind it was, but
and they didn't really like they were just letting Sammy just sit in the back seat bleeding out.
Yeah.
Like they weren't like pushing down on the wound, or like as you see in other films. And
Or you would think
they'd have medical supplies with him to an extent.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a bit weird.
For being so like stocked up on gas and all that sort of stuff and food and things, you would have thought they'd have some sort of like, you wouldn't just go into a war zone without having some sort of medical first aid box or something like that. Even
a couple of plasters or something.
That's exactly what it is. Chuck a couple of plasters over the top of it, and then I'm sure you'd be all right for a little bit. But yeah, I completely agree.
I just saw it as them sort of accepting their fate, almost, like, as in, I'm sure we see them with supplies, medical supplies, at another point, do we not? Like, I don't know. I just think
I remember they watched the guy that got shot earlier on with the gauze, and that's when Jesse takes that photo and he's pushing it onto the wound and stuff. That's when I remember seeing that, but I can't recall them. Maybe they did, but.
Well, like,
if it did show them with it and then they didn't use it then that's even worse.
Yeah. But yeah, I just saw it as like a kind of, like you said, I thought it was like, it was stunning, and maybe that stopped me asking for logic. Maybe because it looked so good, I was just like, do you know what? Fuck it. Let's just sit in this for 3 minutes and enjoy that.
Yeah, that's fair. And then they arrive at the base, and obviously Sammy's passed away at this point, and this for me is the big kind of point in the movie that I kind of fell away with it a bit the more I watch it. The shot though, prior to them like being shown at the camp, was amazing. The helicopter flying really low across the lake with the military vehicles on the side. that shots I thought were amazing, like beautifully done. And the shot of Joel, and this is where I thought like Wagner was at his best, was when it's the silence of him screaming, and he's just standing at the edge, like just howling, like because obviously he's been through this traumatic experience of his friends being shot, Sammy's been killed, he was almost dead, like he was like screaming, you know, and I thought that was so visceral and so well done. I thought that was great, and then there's the interaction between Jesse and Lee, and Kaylee Spaney delivers the line, "I've never been so scared in my life and never felt more alive," and it's so, for me, it feels so wooden and just weird. Like the way she delivers it, I can't even like do an impression of it, but it's just so dull. And she's like, "I've never been so scared in my entire life, and I've never felt more alive." It's genuinely that monotone. I just, it was such. I don't know if like what they're trying to portray was like their character was so out of it because of going through that or whatever. But yeah, it was just a weird conversation and a weird delivery of lines, and yeah, that kind of was like the worst that she was. Don't get me wrong, like she was good in this film in terms of like her portrayal of Jesse, in terms like physically and a lot of the lines were fine, but there was just a few ones that really caught me off guard. It almost seemed as if like they were dubbed after the fact or something. The sound didn't, I don't know, it just sounded really weird to me.
It might have been ADR, to be fair. Like it might
have been, but that would have been like that's crazy if that was the case. But it just took me out of it a little bit. But yeah, that whole military base scene was really cool from a filmmaking standpoint of like the helicopters, the Chinooks taking off with the jeeps underneath them, and that I thought was really good. The sound, it was so loud, and Joel screaming scene was good. But yeah, this is where the film kind of takes a bit of a detour that I didn't really feel like it came back from, to be honest. What did you guys think of this little sequence here?
I don't know if you guys thought the same, but like seeing like all the military and stuff like that was the first or one of the few times that it felt like it was like a massive conflict for me. Like a lot of it was more like kind of intimate sort of like street level fighting. We obviously saw the guns in that when they were watching them from the truck and stuff like that near the start, but this was like the first time that we saw like all these military things, and it was the first time I was like, okay, so this is kind of like the level of the thing as a whole, as opposed to just the little conflicts that were happening out and about. It was like the first sort of full scale thing that I remember really seeing. So I thought that was quite neat to see it like that. But yeah, there wasn't much more with that. Oh, I did like the fact that that Lee took a photo of Sammy.
Oh yeah,
and then
deleted it
as well. Like
good point.
Yeah, that was quite an interesting point as well, because there was a whole talk about like, if I died, would you photograph me and that sort of things. And I thought that was quite an interesting. It was almost like she was choosing her humanity over her career kind of thing, which I thought was a nice little touch.
A very good point.
So yeah, that was Todd.
Yeah, nothing really. I agree. I think Joel, that screaming bit was really effective. Yeah, I never thought about the scale of it before you said there. Really, like that. You know, it's the first time we've seen it as like a real military conflict instead of boots on the ground.
I think the explanation of that for me, sorry, just on that point, is that like this is where the forces had got to. They were chasing the forces the whole time, so that's why you never really got to see that. But you are right; it does open your eyes to this is like an army. You know, it's not just militiamen and stuff like that. Yeah, good point. Sorry, Tom, carry on.
No, that's it. Like it was a relatively unremarkable scene, and again, that isn't me having a dig. Like as in, it was just right. This is the again, going to like game sort of term, this is the checkpoint. I know it literally is a checkpoint as well, but like this is the checkpoint. This is where we save, we stock up, and we go. It was again, like it was good to see them moving forward, and then obviously we get to the climax, the final act as such.
So I'll just take a couple of minutes to quickly overrun this. I won't do it like scene by scene or bit by bit, but they arrive in DC and they're following the military towards the White House, and so there's several scenes of stuff getting blown up and all that kind of jazz, and I won't touch too much on that. It's the kind of character interactions for me that really got me here. So there's a moment where So Jesse, like, how many hours do you reckon this was after it? Maybe 12 hours after it or something like that. It's in the evening. That was the morning, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This is the evening time,
Yep.
or nighttime of that. So 12 hours removed from Sammy passing away. You know, maybe 16 hours, 18 hours removed from that traumatic experience. And this is where my big bugbear with the film is. So they're in DC and there's a scene between Joel and Jesse and they just look at each other when there's like shooting and gunfire all around them. They just nod at each other and smile as in like, this is class. You know what I mean? This is where we want to be. And then there's a subsequent shot of Lee where head up against the wall screaming because she's like full of PTSD or something like that. Like, she's just like, this isn't what I signed up for. I don't want to be here. I'm like devastated with losing Sammy. Don't want to be a journalist no more. That's what I took from it. Mm-hmm. All that kind of stuff. And that's how it's portrayed all the way up to this is like Jesse's like being really reckless, like running across roads and taking photos and stuff like that, being a bit silly. Joel's not really overlooking her anymore. She's just doing her own thing. And then they get to the kind of the gates that have been blown up. And again, Lee's like traumatized. Jesse's like trying to get photos and she's staying across the road from them. And Joel's like shouting at her, no, come across to us kind of thing. So, and that was all, I was like okay with that in terms of like, she's just locking in a little bit because this is the culmination of it. They've kind of not got over their trauma, but they're kind of burying it a little bit, whereas Lee can't do that. Absolutely fine. And then there's all the cars that come out the White House and then they get shot and stuff like that. And then Lee all of a sudden stands up and goes, oh, he's not in there. And then they just turn around and walk towards the White House. And I was like, one, like, why is a journalist the only one to realize that? Because then the soldiers are like, oh shit, they're going into the White House, let's follow them. And you're like, who the fuck are these guys? So they get in the White House, and the combat in the White House I thought was really well done though, in terms of like the combat, like corridor to corridor, side rooms, all that kind of stuff. Like Lee running across trying to get a photo of the corridor, which was fine, but like that was like the Lee we'd seen for the majority of the film. But then why 5 minutes prior to this, for a 5-minute spell, did we see her like unable to move, screaming, crying, upset, all that kind of stuff, and now all of a sudden she's locked in again? I just thought that was weird. And then, long story short, Jessie does the same thing that Lee does. She tries to replicate it. Lee realizes that she's not going to be safe to do it. She runs into her way, pushes her down. She gets shot. Lee takes a couple of photos as she's fallen. Again, I wasn't that bothered about that. I was like, oh my god, like, you know, like, that's shocking because the main character's died, but her taking the photos is exactly what Lee would have done to her, right? So why, and you guys can maybe explain to me, why did neither of them like check on her, like see if she's okay? Joel doesn't even look at her. He doesn't even look back at her. He just says to Jessie, like, let's go. And then they move through, and then the end shot's the president getting shot, which I thought the quote was really good. Was Joel saying, "I need a quote. Don't let them kill me. That'll do." And then he gets shot. I thought that was class. I thought that was good. And the whole shot of like Jessie sitting with her camera here, and then quickly going like that and taking it, and that was like the final shot of the film in terms of the actual film in the film, and then the rest was just photos and stuff. I thought that was good. But the whole back and forth, like complete tonal shift of the characters, I thought was really weird. How long do you think, like, do you guys think this story was told over a 3-4 day period? So where's the Jessie that's crying in the car and being sick in the car, all the way to this, don't even look back at this mentor figure that I've idolized because she's been shot, I need to take this photo, kind of go from? That completely removed me out of the movie, and I think on every rewatch it takes me out of it a little bit more. I get the whole Alex Garland kind of story making of, you know, like they'll do anything at any cost to get this photo, and this is like war journalism, just war journalism is all about, and like that kind of stuff. But I just felt the tonal shift in such a short period of time was too much for me. If they'd have said that this was like a 2-week escapade, start to finish, and there was more step by step of Jessie developing and Lee descending into PTSD. And if Lee had kept that PTSD throughout the whole rest of the film, I would have been fine with it. But it was the whole weird, like, oh my god, he's not in there, like, out in the car kind of thing. Like, I just, the first time viewing it, I kind of noticed it, but I was like, oh, whatever, I don't really care because it's cool. Like, the whole rest of the film's cool, or the whole film's cool, but every time it takes me out of it. But yeah, that's me, 3 minutes on the end of the film. That's my kind of rough thoughts. We can discuss it more after. You guys maybe give your thoughts on that last maybe 15, 20 minutes.
No, I completely agree. I think it was very abrupt in a lot of the stuff it tried to do, which didn't sit with me either. That was probably a few things. I didn't even think that Kirsten Dunst's death was like should have, or was needed either. I thought it was one of those things that it just kind of happened, and like it felt very dramatic, and it's like the whole film wasn't about like being super dramatic about stuff. It was like it was kind of getting like the factual things and almost like it's the whole facts or feelings kind of thing. It kind of put feelings aside a little bit, and with her death and her like the pictures of her, it felt very cliche. You know, like when someone gets shot in the back and they go, "Oh," it felt like that kind of thing for me.
I thought it wasn't like that because she just like falls, like as in she doesn't do the whole arms up. She just falls as if she has been shot. I thought I was actually good because like normally in Hollywood films when people get shot, they do the and they get like blasted back. Whereas I thought she just kind of fell forward. But
yeah, I don't mean like the actual act, but like the pictures of her, like the slow motion of her like falling down. Like I felt it was like a bit like drawn out. I totally agree. I think the fact that like Jesse and Joe were just like, oh yeah, let's keep going. I think that I suppose that was kind of more like the facts were feeling thing, but it was kind of like it didn't feel right for me. Especially after having
check on her though. Didn't even check on her, and Joe didn't even look at her. I didn't get that at all.
Or even like a put your fingers to the pulse sort of thing.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. But I wasn't quite. Again, I think the whole build to that was really cool, and it felt like, again, going back to games, it felt like Rainbow Six, like that sort of like thing. I thought that was a really interesting and cool thing to see. And then of course, getting to present, I thought the ending was really interesting. Like the fact that when he asked for the quote and it was "Don't let him kill me," I thought that was a really interesting. Like it just showed obviously the kind of like the yellow belliedness of the president, which I thought was really good. But I kind of have the same or similar sort of like negatives about that sort of like Kirsten Dunst's death scene and all that sort of thing to yourself, Collie. But Todd, what was your thoughts on a film that you really, really enjoyed?
Yeah, like I think when you said, Collie, about like you didn't really clock it on the first time because you're enjoying it. I was just like I was in for the ride, mate. I was just having the best time, and I don't think I like until you said. And again, we haven't really talked about it because we knew we were doing this, like so we haven't gone over it as much as maybe we would another new release. I was just like, oh yeah, I didn't really think about it. I love that Lee's death was kind of unceremonious, that it's kind of a casualty of the conflict type thing. I love that Jesse was because Lee wouldn't have taken the photo, and if she would have taken the photo, she would have deleted it. I still believe that. I still believe that. I know she did it for Sammy because she's known him for a long time. I think she'd have done the same for Jesse. But Jesse doesn't know that. Jesse's going off the words of, what do you think? Well, I think you would take the photo, so I'm going to do the same thing so I can be like you. I was wrapped up in the whole thing. I'm excited for a second watch, not because I think I'll think any less of it, but just so that I can see like where you're coming from. Because, like I say, I would have loved to have got another watch of this before we had the discussion. But yeah, I was that kid in the background who'd probably had a bit much sugar. Was on like a high of just like, they're going through here, they're shooting people. Like, what's going to happen next? I think, and like was just more wrapped up in the sort of event of the whole thing, rather than applying sort of logic to it. Which again, is probably what will happen on a second rewatch, because now I'm not wondering what's around the next corner. I know what's around the corner. So yeah, I feel like a sort of like I'm copping out a bit in that I can't be part of that discussion in terms of what it meant.
You didn't clock it. That's fine. Like it's
just one of those things that I thought the ending was well pitched. I do get the PTSD thing, that it was just out of nowhere and then it didn't mean anything.
So like the PTSD thing, I was fine with that. Because of the death of Sammy and the trauma that they went through with the thing. It was the tonal shift back to like locking it in for like, I keep doing it. He's not in there. That's like, I was fine going to PTSD, but stick with it.
an impact on. It didn't have. It was a wasted sort of. It almost felt like, well, what can Lee do while Jessie's finding herself? If Jessie's finding herself in this moment where she's like, right, fuck it, let's just take photos. I'm a war photographer. This is my life now. Oh well, Lee's doing that as well. So can we maybe give her something different to do? Like,
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, that's it.
that's the wrong decision. That's the wrong decision to make. Yeah. But that last sort of last siege on the White House was fucking class. Like, I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Cool. We've kind of spoke about Civil War in quite a lot of detail there. Was there anything else that you guys wanted to touch on before we maybe wrap it up?
Just the discourse around it. Like, I think it's important that if we're talking about the film and like the amount of people who, like, I've seen the word centrist used a lot, and cowardly, like not sort of depicting anybody as, because I don't read letterbox reviews before I go in. I completely avoid them, make my own mind up, and then read them afterwards. And like, to say that like not picking a side is cowardly, or like that it's centrist and pathetic is mental in my eyes. Like, the fact that this was shown from the eyes of and again, I don't know how you two feel about it in the more general term, but like the fact that it's shown from a completely neutral perspective. This isn't a film about is war good or bad. This isn't a film about who's right and who's wrong, or like which side. We're not talking partisans. We're talking like the need for journalism, like how necessary it is, and like that these people exist. It was. I need to rewatch it, but it feels like a film about content as well. Like, it's a depiction of how far are people willing to go to get that last bit of content, to get the new bit of content, or to get the thing that like they've been striving for. What are they willing to push for? And I think if you've watched this and gone, it was a shit war film, or it was a centrist, like lazy film that didn't dare pick sides, you need some fucking media literacy. Like, again, in my eyes, I
don't need, like, because centrism, I suppose, in itself is a political ideology, isn't it? I think it's more like apolitical, isn't it? And it doesn't even it's not like right, left, or center. There's no like political like discussion in it, I suppose, really, because it doesn't ever go into that, which I think is actually almost braver than picking a side. In my eyes, I think it could easily delve into goodies and baddies from whatever side you're on. And you're right. Oh yeah. Go on, because I said, because I was waiting to say you're right. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah. Because satire is dead. In terms of like the world that we're living in now, you can't take the piss out of the government, because they're on such a fucking weird place where like nothing. You read an article and you don't know whether that headline's come from the Onion or not. Like, that's where we're at. Do you know what I mean? Like, so how do you make it? You can't. Sorry, Massey. Sorry. I was
gonna say again, Todd, you're right. The whole thing about content was an interesting take on it, because it felt kind of like, remember in Nope, when there's the cinematographer that was like basically willing to do anything to get the perfect shot? It was like that, but for war photographers, essentially, is kind of the way that I sort of saw it as well. And that was kind of the sort of the kind of imagery, or the mirror that I sort of like saw as it there. Collie?
Yeah, like we kind of talked about the political nature of the film, or the lack of political nature of the film earlier. I think it was a smart choice, not just from a purely box office perspective, but it allows you to go into the film and just, it's more about war journalism than anything else, probably. But I understand why people like that. Like, I quite enjoyed it went that direction rather than just a pure action combat film. But I can understand why people thought that it was going to be this, but except it was that instead. Not in terms of like the lack of political thing of it, but just the lack of action, I would say. Mm-hmm. I can understand why people thought it would be more action based on the trailers and stuff, especially. Mm-hmm. But I, for one, wasn't disappointed that it was that way.
I think it's hard to do that as well. Like, sorry, but like with the trailers, you either give away and they did give away two big bits of the film that were then developed. You know, the town where they don't know what, like, or they don't get involved, and the Jesse Plemons scene. Like, they are two massive scenes that if you want to go into the trailer, it would just ruin how effective they were or subsequently weren't. But, like, I just think, yeah, I get why people would be pissed off if they've gone in thinking it's a war film, but then they can't walk out of it going, well, that was a shit war film, because it wasn't a war film. Like, and that's a lot of the chat that I'm seeing on Letterboxd and stuff, is that, like, because it's called Civil War, and like you say, that sweeping shot that I don't think we talked about, with the helicopter going over the top of Washington and the bullets, like,
smoke, and it comes out through the billowing smoke and stuff like that. Yeah.
Insane. Like, that was ridiculous. But that's a big part of the trailer. So you're thinking, right, we're going to get, like, helicopters fucking chewing on with each other, and you didn't. So I get that. But yeah,
agreed. Okay. I think we should move on to rating, because that's a good while we spoke about Civil War there. So I'll go first. I rated it on Letterboxd as 4 stars. Collie?
It's a 4-star for me. It was a 4.5, but through subsequent watches, I've knocked it back down to a 4.
And Todd?
Yeah, mine was a 5-star. I walked out with that, with me bones still rattling. I'm looking forward to watching it again.
Interesting. Okay, well, that is us completed the second part of our 2-part Alex Garland special. This is actually the longer part, even though it's just the 2 films, but yeah, it's all good. So yes, if you are watching on YouTube, please remember to subscribe and hit the like button as well, and let us know in the comments what you thought about Civil War, about Men, about any of Alex Garland's films. And if you're listening on Spotify as well, of course, remember to follow us, and yeah, let us know on Twitter if you're if what you thought about Mr. Garland. So at LCD_pod, and of course, as I say on Letterboxd, you'll get us on all the normal usernames. So Massey1903 for me, Collective Unit for Collie, and then ToddRov28 for Mr. Todd. But guys, thank you so much for listening. Our next episode, we can reveal, is going to be on the one and only Greta Gerwig. And it will be her 3 films, not the one that she co-directed. It will be the 3 that we'll be talking about. So I'm excited for that one. But guys, thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you on the next one about Greta Gerwig. Have a lovely rest of your month, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Cheers, everyone. Bye.
See you in a bit.